Hey everyone, welcome back. This is our third working session on an app that I'm building. I'm calling it Credos. If you don't know what this is or why I'm doing it, there's an intro video below that will explain it. So far, we have made an input page and a small API and React component to make that interactive, and we also have user sign in and sign out. And so in this video, I think I'm going to start work on the dashboard page, make some good seed data so we can have some good data to play with. And so let's get going. Okay, so here's our input page. Just listing out these attributes on the model. We have these little buttons that we made last time. And so we can asynchronously update these, kind of like a checkbox. And so if I open my mockups real quick, so here's our dashboard. This is where we're trying to get. This is what the tracking page, this is what this page will eventually look like. So just be able to check these boxes and store your result for the day. So I think I'm going to start on this dashboard page. And because I obviously haven't been using this app every day because I'm still making it, I don't have data for this page. So I don't have these number of days. I don't have these streak type things. I don't have averages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make what's called seed data, and that is it seeds our database, or it fills it with some sample data that we can use to build this kind of stuff out. And so Rails has this kind of built in as a seeds task that you can run. And so here this file is called seeds.rb. And so anything you put in here, you can run in a console. You can run Rails DB seed, and it will run this file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a user. I'm going to make them some records. So the first thing I want to do, let's do a user. Let's do find or create. I'm using an exclamation point so it will error rather than just fail silently. So let's give this user, let's call it user@example.com. Do we need any other data for user? I'll go ahead and make this full screen for now. So if we look at our users table, really just need email and password. So password's going to be this. Okay, so now if we run our seeds, so we do Rails DB seed, it should create that user, except something is wrong. Okay, find or create is not find or create by. I think that's what I'm looking for. Find or create by. Users.password does not exist. We may not be able to use find or create because this password column is not, it's a virtual attribute and it's not actually on the user. Okay, so we'll do this the somewhat longer way. So let's say user is user.where. The email is this, .first. User is nil. Then we're going to do user. Okay, so we look for the user first. If it doesn't exist, we create it. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so now if we come in here to our console, we do user, let's do user.last. And so we have this user. So it's an ID of 4. So if we run this seed again, it should not make another user. So user.last again, still have an ID of 4. Okay, so we're finding, or we're creating that user. So now let's make this user some records. So if we switch over to our mockup, we're going to want probably a couple days. So the days here is just the number of days you've tracked. Total is the number of activities you've tracked, so every checkbox you've hit. Streak is the longest running streak, obviously, and then your average is, on average, how many of the 7 items that are here do you succeed on? And then most consistent and focus on, I'm not sure how we want to define those yet, so we'll come back to that. And then we'll also need to make some type of quote system as well. Okay, so first let's get like a week's worth of activity. So let's start with, let's do 7.days ago to today. Probably need some parentheses around this. So we're going to iterate over this range, 7 days ago to today, each do a date. Let's test this in the console, make sure this works. Each day, we're just going to print out the day. Cannot iterate, active zone, export time zone is on. Okay, so there's a way you have to format this that I always forget. So let's do Rails iterate date range. It's not what I want. Okay, we may need to make these things dates, but they should be. Okay, so if I do 7 days ago, what is that? Okay, so that is an active support time with zone. Okay, so I might need to make this a date. Okay. So now we've just basically iterated over a week. So I don't know if we need those parentheses or not. Let's see. Okay, we don't. Okay, so for each of these dates, what we want to do is we want to make a record for this user. So we'll do user.records, and then we will shovel in. So we can do the shovel where we do like record.new, or we can do just .create. I think that's fine. We use the exclamation point, the bang, create bang here, so it errors. In a seed file, I don't want things to just silently fail and be nil, because that will just cause problems later. Okay, so what information do we need here? So we have these, all of these attributes, which I'll just copy over and try to clean up. Okay, and so let's just give them some random. Let's make them all true for now. And then we need the day, of course. And so we just pass the date. And because we're saying user.records here, create, it will automatically, we don't need to specify user ID here. It will automatically be set. Okay, so for this user, let's go ahead and run that and see if we can create all those records. So now if we do user.where email user@example.com .first.records.count. So we have 8. Okay. Now if we run the seeds again, we're already checking if the user exists, and if so, we're not doing anything, but we are creating these records again for the same day. So now if we do count, we've got 16. So that doesn't really make sense. You can't have 2 records for the same day. So there's 2 things we're going to do about that. One is we're going to destroy all records for the user here. The other thing is I want to enforce this at a database level. So day, the combination of the user ID and the day should be unique. So a user can't have 2 records for the same day. So resg migration, make records user and day unique. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a unique index on the combination of these 2 columns. I think there's a helper that's just unique index. So you can do this. You can do add index unique true. I think there's also a helper that you can just do unique index, but that will work. So add index to records, the combination of user ID and day, and we're going to say that it is unique. So this migration should fail because we already have violated that constraint. Yeah, so it could not create because this user ID of 4 and the day of 9/3 exists twice. So that makes sense. So let's go ahead and just delete all of our records. Let's just do it for that user. I guess we can do them all. We're not really using the other ones. Okay, so let's delete all those. And then now the migration should pass. And the results, hopefully this isn't too hard to see. I don't think I could bump up the font in this. But the result is we now have a unique index on the user ID and the day. So now if we do railsdb seed, it will create our records. So if we run this count again, we have 8, and then if we run it again, it will error. But yeah, duplicate key violates unique constraint. So it works, but we don't want it to error. We want to be able to just run the seeds over and over and over, and it just work. Let's get rid of this stuff. So what we want to do is we want to do user.records.destroyAll. So we want to basically just, every time we run the seeds, we are starting completely over. So now if we run it, it should work. We have 8. If we run it again, same thing, we have 8. So now we're just, every time we run this, we're starting fresh with test data. Okay, so now what I want to do, because I want to make this, page somewhat dynamic. So I don't want it to be the same data every time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slightly randomize our seed data. And so basically I want to get a random number, and I want to alternate these between true and false. So if I can remember how you do this. So if I do like random times 100, That'll give me a random number between 1 and 100. Well, let's just look it up. So Rails random number. Okay, so it looks like I can just pass 100. Possibly. Yeah. So if I do rand 100, it'll just give me a random number between there, and then I can do use the modulus operator, so modulo 2. So basically, is this even or odd? And so this is going to return either 1 or 0 based on the number I got back. So I can use that, and I can say random of 100 mod 2, and then I'm going to use this ternary operator in Ruby. So if you wrote this out the full way, you would say mod 2 equals 0. You'd do something like this. But I'm going to shorten this so I can fit it in line. Well, actually, I just need this conditional, because this itself will evaluate to true or false. Yeah, okay, so I just need that. I was going to try and do something like this. Use the ternary operator, which is just the shorthand of this. But this statement evaluates to Boolean, and that's what our end result is. So we just need that. Okay, so that's all we need. Okay, so now we can have random data. Let's go back up and look at our records again. Okay, so now we are just seeing, some random stuff in here. True, false, true, 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 false, false. So this will be much more realistic when we start to make this page. Okay, let's close those. Okay, so now we kind of have some decent data to work with. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to build out these aggregations. And I may do this test-driven to show the testing process a little bit, and because I think it will make it faster actually to have an immediate test of all this and not have to do console stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new folder in the app directory called services. I'm going to use this service pattern to a degree. So I'm going to call this the aggregation service, I think. This may not be the best name, but we will change it if that is so. So I'm going to make this model, and basically what I want in here is I want to be able to do calculations here. So I want to say like let's say number of days tracked. And so I'll pass in a user, and then I'll do calculation stuff in here, and then I'll have like number of activities tracked. I'll do stuff in there, and I'll have like daily average. So basically I'm making this class that will just do all of my calculation stuff, and then I'll come over here and I'm going to write tests for it so I can have like a fast feedback loop. So let's make a new directory here called tests, or called services. I'm going to copy the model test because that's basically what this is. It's essentially a model. I'm just keeping it out of the model directory. Because Rails, like a Rails model generally means like it inherits from active record. And this does not. It's just we call it Poro, a plain old Ruby class. P-O-R-O. Okay. So now let's just run this test. Okay, so a little bit about my test setup. One of the nice things about having Vim and Tmux set up is I have this plugin that I can hit a hotkey and it will run a specific test. So if the test passes, you see that little screen popping up. If they pass, it just goes away. If it errors, so if I do like assert true equal false, which is not true, then it stays open and it tells me like, hey, your thing failed. So I can run a specific test, or I can run a file, or I can run all my tests. So this combination makes it pretty fast to do like test-driven development. So that's what we'll try. Okay. So I believe by default, Rails creates fixtures now. Okay, it does. So we'll have to set up a little bit of our test data, which is okay. So we have 2 users here. We have some records. So let's go ahead and make sure that these records here, oops, let's make this full screen. So let's make these 2 records belong to user 1, and let's give them 3 records. So here we have 3 for 3 different days. And let's just change some of these values to true. Okay, so here's our record data. When we run our test, all these will be inserted into the database. And then on every test run, we'll just basically do a, it's not a revert, I just lost the name. A rollback. It'll do a rollback of the transaction. And so we'll basically just keep resetting back to this state of three records. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to leave a gap in between these records. So let's go ahead and make this. So this first one is on 9.4. This one's on 9.6 and 9.7. So I've intentionally skipped 9.5 because when I track the number of days, I'm tracking the number of days that you have submitted anything. And so if you miss a day, I want that to be, I don't want that to automatically count. So it's not the number of days since you started, it's how many days you actually do something. Okay, and so in here, if I do, just to test this out, let's grab the first user, and let's do .records.count, and so we should be able to assert equal that these records, there should be 3 records for the first user. So expected 0, we got 3. Okay, so let's do by bug and let's just figure out what's going on here. Okay, so user.first.records doesn't have any. Let's check the last user as well. Yeah, so our ordering is a little off. What we can do there, just so we can distinctly, we want to be able to distinctly find this user. So let's give them a specific email. I do notice that email is duplicated here, and there doesn't seem to be a problem with that. So I think we are also missing a unique constraint on email here, which we'll add in a second. So let's do a to-do add unique constraint on user's email. Okay, so for now, let's do, just make his email user@example.com. So now when we query this user, let's do user.find by email, user@example.com. Get rid of this assertion. Now this should pass. Okay, it does. So if the window goes away or you see at the bottom it says success, that means that our tests work. Okay, so since I copied the record model test, let's go ahead and name this correctly. So I'm going to call this Aggregation Service test. And I'm going to test that. So I'm going to test this class method. So there's two different ways you can kind of set this up. Sometimes you can do these class methods, which I like, which makes them more functional. You just pass in what you need and you get something back. You can also make an initializer, where you like grab the user, and then these would be just model methods. So instead of passing it in, you would just reference like user within here. I think they are about the same. Some people like this because you can do like a dependency injection type stuff. But in this case, I think it is about the same. I want to treat this more like a math class and not like a functional math class, and not like an object that I need to build up, even though we're doing Ruby. It's really just a style thing, personal preference thing. Okay, so we're going to test the number of days tracked. Do I have to describe here, or is this an RSpec only thing? Because I kind of want to group this, but we can just go with this. Okay, so we're going to test the number of days tracked when there are no records. So this is like our base case. Like there are no records, and we should not error just because there are no records. And then we'll have another test for when there are records. Let's grab that. Okay, so let's get our user. Let's go ahead and open our user fixtures again. So we've identified this one as the one that has records. For this one, let's do no@records.com. So let's find the user that has no records, and then we're going to assert that these two things are equal. So user.records.count should equal 0. And then let's test this class. Let's pass in the user. This is the result. So we assert that the result is equal to 0. So we're finding our user, just a little safety check. Do they actually have 0 records? And then we're going to call our method and assert that the result of this is 0. So if you haven't tracked any, if you have no records, then your number of days tracked should be 0. So if we run this, we should expect this to pass and then this to fail because we don't have anything in here, so it's going to return nil and not 0. Okay, and it fails. It says expected nil, but it got 0, which is what we were expecting. So that's our first test case. And then for the second one, I'm just going to copy this setup. So we find our user. This time we want to get user@example.com. If I can spell. So we're going to assert that this person has 3 records, and then therefore the result of their thing should be 3. And then now this will fail here. If we run this again. So it expected nil, and it got 3. So if I run both of these, I'll just run the file. So I now have 2 failing tests. Okay, so now this is the red portion of TDD, red-green refactor. So we have 2 failing tests, so now let's write this method. So pretty simple, user.records.count should work. Okay, and it works. Simple enough. Okay, let's do this one now. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, both of these. I'm going to test the same thing. You want to test if you don't have any activities, and then when you do. Okay, so find our user with no records. They should have 0. Probably don't need this right here, but we can keep it. So the number of activities for somebody who has no records should be 0. If we run this, it should fail because we expected nil, because that's what we're returning right here. But we got 0. I always forget the order of assert equal. I don't know if the thing you're expecting should go first, or I feel like I might have this backwards. Rails assert equal order. Expected and actual. Okay, so I think I do have it backwards. Okay, wait, what did that say? So the thing I expect is first. So what do I expect? Okay, yeah, so this is backwards. So technically, the thing you expect should be first, and then the result should be second. So we go 3. Let's just switch these real quick. Doesn't really matter, except that it makes the error messages read a little better. Reads a little more logically. Okay. So now it says we expected 0, because that's the first thing we pass. But we got nil, which makes sense. So now let's fix the second one to fail. So we're finding the user, user.example.com. We expect them to have 3 records. And then the number of activities tracked. Okay, so let's think about how we want to do this. So let's open our records fixture. So we have these 7 attributes. And in a previous session, we made these a default of false. So I'm wondering if we need an empty case here, or if we can just do true false. I think we can just do true false. It all depends upon what I mean by number of activities. So I guess this is the number of things you've done, I guess. So every time you check something, so if it's true. So that'll work. Okay, so let's look at these records one more time. So the result here, the number of activities is the number of trues we have. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I believe there should be 8. So now if we run this test, it fails. Expected 8, we got nil. Okay? All right, well now let's write this method. So how do we want to do this? So what we can do is we can get the user and all their records. And for each, this is going to be kind of inefficient. So maybe we can think of a better way to do this afterwards. Okay, so for each record, let's just do it like this is typically my strategy. Let's do it like the dumbest way possible, and then we'll make it better. Okay, so what we're going to do is for each of these attributes, we're going to increment our activities. Oh, that didn't work. Okay. So if these equal true, I'm going to do sum plus equal 1 if this is true. And then because these are booleans, we don't actually need equal true. We can just use the value. This is super gross, but it should work. And then we're going to return the sum here. So let's try that, and it passes. I can imagine this in a scenario where you have a lot of data becoming kind of gross. So in the future, what we could do is keep kind of like a cached value on the user. So maybe we add a user column like number of activities tracked. And so every time we would mark one of these, we'd basically be incrementing this value on the user model. Could also just cache other things. Could cache the result of this, etc. But here we're just doing the very simple, dumb way, and that works. Okay, so now let's run all of our tests. So all 4 of those pass. Okay, let's do our daily average next. If I don't mess up my multi-select. So daily average should be 0 for somebody who has no records. Let's go here to our records file. And let's figure out the average here. So there's 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 7 per day. And so here we have 3. And then here we have 3 again, and here we have 2. Okay, so now we have to figure out how we want to round these. Guess we can just do normal rounding stuff. Okay, so let's find the average of all of these records. So for the first one, we have 3 that were true. Second one also has 3, and then the third one has 2. So if we do 3 plus 3 plus 2 divided by 3, so we would probably round this up to 3. So let's say that this result is 3. Okay, so let's make sure we have 2 failing tests. And we do. So let's get the user. Let's take the records. And let's go ahead and I think is .sum an active record thing? I want to pass a block to this. Okay, let's do it the dumb way again. Do it the dumb way and then fix it. Okay, so let's do a map. So let's just return the result of all these. So we'll call this the counts. And then in the end, we're going to do the count divided by the number of records. And this, we'll need to watch this for 0 because that probably doesn't work. Okay, so now for each record, what we're going to do is we're just going to add up. Similar thing here, actually. So we're just going to sum every time that we have succeeded. Let's go ahead and close this. So we're going to turn this sum, and then we're going to divide it by the number of records we have. So this one will get close. Ah, okay. So I wonder if I can do .sum here. so I expected 3 and I got 2. So let's see what the result, let's do a bybug here, and let's see what the counts, which is a bad name. So that's 8, which is what we expected. 3 plus 3 plus 2. So user.records.count. So when we do 8 divided by 3, what we have here is integer division by default. And so what we want to do is we want to make one of these a float. And so that will give us the decimal. And then we want to round it. That does round down though, which is interesting. Let's do Ruby round up. Is it ceiling? So what is ceiling for Ruby? Guess let's look at some examples here. So here they should all round down. Oh, so here we're rounding to 2 decimal places. Is that what we want? So here this should be 2. Okay, that appears to work. So if we have 8 activities over 2 days, that's an average of 4. Okay, so what we want here, so this is actually the sum. So we want the sum divided by records.count to a float, so we can get the decimals and then the ceiling of that. So if we do like 2.56 dot ceiling, so that's 3. So if we do 246, that should be, that's also 3. Okay. Not, I feel like round is what we want, but maybe we just need to pass like the precision. The optional half keyword is given. Numbers that are halfway between 2 will be rounded according to the tie-breaking mode. Okay, this is, I think, what we want. We want half up. So 2.5 becomes 3. Okay, that seems better. So 2.5, round, half, up. And then 2.4 should be 2. Okay. Okay, that's what we want. Math is hard. Okay, so now let's run this test again. Cool. Okay, so let's run the entire file. And one of them fails. And it should, because it's this test where we are dividing by 0. So what we want to do is we just want to return 0 if the user.records, we could do .nil or we could do count, or .count equals 0. Still a problem. So it's coming from line 49, which is this test, 38. Okay, so that, okay, so user.records here must not be nil. It's probably an empty association. So this conditional is not passing. Yeah, so .nil is not true. So what we want is Is it dot exist? Exists? Yeah, I think that's what we want. So we want not exists. So you could use an unless here. I don't really love unlesses. I feel like they're just kind of weird, like bend your brain up a little bit. So we're return, let's just do it the simple way. So return 0 if the user.records.count is 0. Okay, so now let's run the entire file, and they all pass. Cool. Okay, so now we have, we've built out these aggregation metrics. We've got some tests behind them. You can see now why I like doing the TDD on stuff like this, because of just how fast the feedback cycle is. You don't have to like make a bunch of console records and then run the method over and over and test them and mutate them and all that. Okay, again, this is not super beautiful, but it is very clear and it works. So good enough for now. This becomes a performance problem, then we will do something about it at that time. Okay, so now we've got all these metrics. So let's go ahead and put these on the page. So the first thing I want, to do is I want to get a little, I need something to click here to go back to the dashboard. And the dashboard doesn't exist right now either. So what I'll do is I'll generate the dashboard controller. So controller dashboard, index. Come over here. So here's our index view. And let's look at our routes. So I made this get dashboard index. So let's do /dashboard to dashboard index. And now that we have this route, let's put this in the layout. Let's make this a part of our nav. So let's just make this, let's do link to, we'll just put the name of the app, dashboard path. Again, super ugly. Let's make it work, and then let's come back and do it better. Okay, so I got an error there because I deleted all my records, and then I tried to reference, I tried to go to /record/5, which doesn't exist. But now we have this little link, so now we're on the dashboard. And so now that we are here, let's go back to our dashboard index page, and let's put these metrics on the page. So if we go back to our mockup, we've got days, we've got total. We haven't done the streak yet, but we've done the average. So I'm just going to make some instance variables. So I'm going to say days, activities, and then average, daily average. And so what we want to do here is we want to, first of all, require login. So before action, require login, because we want to use the current user here. So we want to do aggregation service. Let's open that up again so we can get the method names. Number of days tracked, passing current user. Number of activities tracked, current user again. And then daily average. Okay. So we've got those three things. Let's go back to our index page. And let's just put those on there. So we've got days, activities, average. So here we're just going to put days in. And reload. Uninitialized constant. Excellent. Is it Aggregations Service? Or is it because Rails does not automatically include the service directory? I don't think restarting will actually fix this. I think I need to tell Rails. Oh yeah, it does actually pick that up, but I do have to restart. Okay, cool. All right, so we have zeros for these, which is good because it didn't error. So let's log in. Let's log out and log in as our test user. So go user@example.com. And let's go to our dashboard. Cool. Okay, so we have 8 days worth of stuff. 7 from our... Well, why do we have 8? We should only have 7. So let's look that up. User find by user@example.com. .records. So we do have 8. Let's go ahead and pluck the days. Suit.unique. So it's not a duplicate day. Oh, I guess it does make 8 because it's 7 days plus today. 7 days before plus today. Okay, and our daily average is 3. Okay. So I'm going to do one more thing. Let's go ahead and commit this. We still need to do the best streak, but I'll probably save that for the next time. There's one thing I want to do first. Let's go ahead and look at what we did. So we added a user ID index, or we added an index on the user ID and the day. We have a basic seeds file. We set up some tests and some fixtures. Made an aggregation service. So let's do work in progress dashboard page plus aggregations logic, unique constraints on user ID plus day for records. And then I also want to make the user emails unique, since we, where did I write that to do? Was that in the test? I thought I wrote it to do somewhere with that. Maybe I deleted it. Okay, well, regardless, we will find it later, if it's still there. Okay, same thing, add index to users, email, unique true, migrate. So index on the email. So now if we try and do user.create email test@test.com, that user already exists. So this should error. Oh, so we already have a validation on the model. So we actually need to do this in our test. So let's make these the same, and then our test should fail. So open the aggregation test. check our error message. Yeah, duplicate key value, violated, unique constraint, index users. Okay, so that works. Let's undo that. Okay, so here's our index. Add unique index on users.email. Okay, so we push that up, and I think that is where we will leave it for today. Next time, we'll finish up this fourth aggregation, the best streak, and then we'll try and define what these metrics mean, and maybe go after this quote type block. After that, I think we're probably good to start doing some styling, which will be nice. So we don't have to look at this beautiful mess. But okay, hope you enjoyed that. I will see you next time. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below, or reach out to me on Twitter @JohnMosesman, and I will see you next time. Thanks.